Welcome back to Finding the Edge podcast. I'm Garrett Boyum. In today's episode, in true Finding the Edge fashion, we had a very emergent discussion with Caleb Abney, where we did a live commentary on the Brewers Braves NLDS game, which happened to be the game that the Braves ended up clinching. It's starting to feel like a trend every time I have Caleb on, and I'm about to release his episode, that he is getting featured in some other podcast, or there's an announcement. So per the trend, it seems like this week, as I'm about to release this episode with Caleb, he was just named head coach for Lancaster Bible College out in Pennsylvania. So big congrats to Caleb Abney. If you guys want to see Caleb's offensive style on full display, I highly recommend you guys follow Lancaster Bible College and keep up with all the great things that he's going to be doing there. And so big congrats to Caleb. Caleb and I today had a great conversation watching the game, and today's podcast felt a lot more like a conversation than an interview. So hopefully you guys feel that it's much more natural conversation. Super excited to share this with you guys. What I ended up doing is clipping what I thought would be most interesting for you guys out of that conversation, because there's a lot of dead space and some technical issues going on there. So we clipped all that out so that hopefully it stays really engaging for you guys. Also, too, we actually ended up doing another live stream me and Robert did of a World Series game. So if you guys want to check that out, it's definitely it's a lot longer than this one. Part of the reason that this one ended up being so short was that my camera ended up dying partway through it. So it will abruptly end. So just be forewarned on that if it doesn't have like a natural exit point. But regardless, if you're not following Caleb already, make sure to follow him on Twitter, and then make sure you're following Lancaster Bible College. But yeah, so make sure if you want to see the live stream that Robert and I did of the World Series game, make sure to check out our YouTube channel. We also have a few other previous episodes up there. We've started to do more video podcasts. Obviously, the audio will always be available. But if you want to see some of the visual parts and see our faces and all that good stuff, with the World Series live stream, we actually did pull up some video and talk some base running. So if you want to check that out, head over there. Also, on our YouTube channel, I'll put up clips of our conversation. And so you can always refer to any clips that I put out on social media on our YouTube channel. It'll all be there. So make sure to head over there. Hit subscribe, like, share, all that sort of good stuff. Without further ado, our commentary on the Brewers Braves NLDS game.
Let's begin. Analyzing. Finding the edge.
Go for it. John Smoltz.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in some ways, though, there's some things that he says where I'm not completely anti it, but I understand what you mean.
There are some things where I'm like, yep, cool, rock on, I can get behind that. There are some things that he says that it's like, dude, you are not good for this game. Like, get with it just a little bit. Stop being such an angry old man, a get off my lawn type of guy.
Old man screams at the clouds.
Oh, it's just atrocious. He literally said this. It was yesterday, I think. I think it was the Red Sox Rays game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was JD Martinez, a pitch that was in off the plate, inside. It was not a strike. It was inside. It was very close to being a strike, but it was inside. He slices it to right field for a weak, short fly out.
Mm-hmm.
And John Smoltz, he's Mr. Go the other way, hit oppo, everything, just like every other standard, traditional, old school baseball guy.
Mm-hmm.
You literally shouldn't even be trying to get a hit unless it's to the opposite field. He these words actually came out of his mouth. it's actually easier. Like, that's actually the pitch that you want to try to go the other way on. It's easier to do it on that pitch. I'm like, what? Excuse me? It's easier to hit the ball to the opposite field on a pitch that's inside off the plate. That's not even consistent with like baseball conventional wisdom.
No.
I don't even know like what he was trying to get at there. He just really wanted to make his point and be right about opposite field hitting, but it drives me nuts.
Dude, how about the Giants, man?
Yep. That ball that Gavin Lux hit to end the game was 107 miles an hour. And it did not go out of the ballpark. The wind, I guess, was crazy at Dodger Stadium last night. That was to end the game, and it would have tied it if it had gone out.
Oh, dude, that's the thing that I really liked watching the Giants game, and I didn't see that one, but the I think it was the first game. I was watching back through it, and they had the wind, like how the wind. They had a graphic showing how the wind was moving in the ballpark, and I'm like, this is why I love the ecological approach, and it's not like it's nobody thought about it without the ecological approach, but it highlights one of the factors that the players are going to have to deal with.
Yeah,
and just to me, it screams like you got to be more adaptable, dexterous, because, well, in last night's game, that ball would have gone out under normal circumstances, but do you have another way to be able to hit to still score runs? I mean, yeah. I get it that, the Giants have a good pitching staff too. So I'm not denigrating that, but at the same point, for the coaches that always harp on, just hit it over the fielders, I get it. And it's true until you have the wind that you have to deal with.
Yeah. When it's like blowing straight into you. Yeah. So I think like maybe in those moments, like just lowering your sights slightly, maybe like instead of having such high possible launch angles that you're going for, you're hitting maybe lower line drives that just barely get over the infielders, so that and maybe that's your objective in that game, because you don't want to get up in the wind too much where it's not able to carry as much. But what's also interesting is in that game, Evan Longoria hit a bomb. Like the only run that was scored was his home run. Mm-hmm. So somehow he was able to.
But it's also where he hit it on the field. I think he pulled that one. Whereas where did
it actually wasn't. It was a similar area of the field. It was a little more towards center field, but Gavin Lux's was to left center field, and he's a left-handed hitter, so it was oppo, and Evan Longoria's was kind of straight away left field. So they were similar areas of the field, but maybe in that moment that Evan Longoria hit his, maybe the wind wasn't gusting quite as much, or maybe there was like a big gust that came up right when Lux hit his ball to left center field. So, just the dynamics of how that works and the timing of when you can hit balls is interesting.
I mean, that I don't feel like anybody should get that into the weeds of it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
When you're playing. But at some level, if the conditions that you're in and they're fairly consistent, or they're consistent for that inning, I think we should be working with hitters to make them adjustable. And to your point, I don't think it's launch angle is hard enough as it is, but just shifting your intention to, maybe hitting a line drive and trying to hit more line drives over the infield, or trying to work balls into the gap a little bit more on a lower angle.
Which that's actually, from like a coaching standpoint and a hitter development standpoint, that's where I start anyway, especially with college hitters. That's where I start. And there are some guys that, I may be okay with them, going a little bit higher. And, I'm fine with giving a little more freedom on that. But for the most part, especially with college hitters, just hit the ball hard into the outfield. That's it. Let's start there. There are no conditions. There are zero environmental conditions where that is not ever going to not be a good result.
Right.
So let's start with the thing that's always going to be a good result, and let's work from there. If you end up getting underneath the ball a little bit more and the conditions warrant it, then okay, you've hit a ball over an outfielder's head. Cool. If you end up getting on top of a ball a little bit more, but you've still hit it hard, you still may have a decent chance if you've hit it hard enough to where it's like a one hopper through the infield, just as long as it's not right at an infielder. So start with line drives into the outfield, and then let's work from there, and then we'll make adjustments and be adaptable based on the conditions from there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also based on the type of hitter that you are and what your exit velo potential is currently at that time, as you're trying to build it.
I mean, because the only counterexample I can think of, and it's not really that good of one, is I think my senior year we were playing St. Thomas, and there's just massive wind, and I swear this kid probably hit a line drive at like 110, and it just went. The wind literally knocked it down, so that went straight to the center fielder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that ball was absolutely crushed, and the wind just killed it.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where you can't
kind of being aware of that.
Yeah, right. But too, like, what are we going to just hit ground balls there? Like, I mean, it's one of those unfortunate things where it's like you did everything right and it just wasn't good enough. So,
yeah.
Such is life in the game of baseball.
Yep. That's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got on the open jersey? The no button of the top two, just the like chest popping out.
I mean, do I like it? No, not really. But I don't. There are certain things where I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that to me is that interesting. Like if it makes you feel more swaggy and you play better, I don't care. But you got to play better though.
Yes.
If you're going to do that, you better back that up. How is Yelich done this year?
Not good.
That's kind of what I heard.
I was actually thinking about that the last couple of days when they've talked about how he's not had a very good season and has struggled, and watching him in this series, you can definitely see that too. Like he doesn't look comfortable. He is missing pitches that he has hit in the past, whether it be just swing and miss, foul ball, or hitting weak ground balls or weak contact. Right on cue, he just got beat by a pitch down the middle. It is interesting. It highlights to me the, kind of the nature of development, specifically on the hitting side. Man, he was very late. Holy Toledo. Did you just see that?
Yes. This is why, though, I love the side angle, because I thought maybe, he was just under it. No, it's so obvious. He was, yeah.
To me, that's the only benefit to the side angle is you can see contact point.
Yeah.
And you can see like how late somebody is. But to me, it highlights how it's something in hitting we just kind of push to the side and say, well, hitting's really hard. That's like a stereotypical, like a very typical conventional thing that we say, which it is, yes. But like for a guy to go from as heralded as he was, like God's gift to hitting, and he's got everything figured out, and because he made this change to his swing, or he made this adjustment, or he did this, and now he's arrived, and then then this year he's been very average, like, or a little below. And it just, to me, shows like no matter what changes to your swing or changes to, to what you think from a hitting standpoint that you've like arrived, adaptability is always going to be something that if you don't prioritize that on a year-to-year basis, like consistently, and being in the moment with the pitch in that exact moment and adapting to that pitch, and that's like that should trump everything. That should trump whatever swing changes, whatever, he's doing this different this year than he's done in the past. Like if adaptability isn't your goal in the moment with the pitch in that exact millisecond, then you're going to have these ups and downs where you're like constantly going like this because you're just relying on that next swing change or that next approach change that it limits development because we just do these like wild back and forth shifts in our perspectives on what we think works. And most of the time it's a movement aesthetic that doesn't actually translate to success, but we attribute it to it. And
well, I mean,
I just wonder if we were to commit to adaptability, and if that were the most important thing, if we could find some more consistency instead of these wild changes in levels of success for these stars.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I agree. I mean, for me, it is about that moment, being fully present, being fully connected to the information in the environment, i.e. the pitcher and the ball, as a great play occurs right there.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that even right there requires you to be in the moment, and actually, so, okay, this is, I don't know if this will make the podcast or not, but so, not to touch on any of the points that you just expanded upon. But let's say somebody is like way too in their head when they're hitting or playing, or let's say trying to field a ball. Just have them have a conversation with you while they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And just shut their brain down from like what they're doing. Yep. I was working with somebody for like with martial arts, and we're trying to take more of an ecological approach. And we're talking about how we don't want what we're doing to be rote, but yet you still need to have a feel for the techniques. And so in it, he was just talking about how, his training partner that he was working with, was just saying how he can't do something or whatever. And so they start doing their movement generator, and he just starts talking to him, and they're just having a conversation. And then all of a sudden he's doing the stuff that he said he couldn't do.
Yep. He didn't realize it because he was placing the limitations on himself and his mind in the moment, rather than allowing his unexplored athletic ability to just come out naturally. And coaches don't like that. Coaches don't like that because coaches are egomaniacs. And I know that that's an extreme thing to say, but it's true. Like, coaches can't handle when something happens without them being the ones that did it. And it's like, just let go of that. Like, just let go. It's okay. Athletes can do things without you specifically prescribing it. I promise you, especially the higher levels you go to, they have capabilities that you might be getting in the way of, because you want to make sure that you have things go the way that you want it to, because it makes you look good. And that is such a constraint and an inhibitor to athletic development, in my opinion.
So what would you say on that? Like, SlowMo from the side? Like, I like looking at that and being like, well, he was just a little early.
Yeah, he was early, and he like swung over it. Like, he wasn't even on the same plane as that pitch. Like, it was like this.
Yeah. I mean, granted, it's not a good pitch to swing at. We're not saying that by any means. That is not a good pitch to swing at. But if he were to hit it, like, what adjustment would he have to make in order for him to actually be able to hit it? Well, he was early, and he wasn't on the same plane.
He wasn't on the best plane to be able to actually run into that pitch, even if he hadn't have been early.
Right. I mean, and two, like, I like to think about, like, okay, what other ways could he have bought himself more time to allow the pitch to get a little bit further in? And or, because that pitch was so low to the ground, could he have actually gone out and moved, allowed his weight to shift even more forward and take his center, to go out and get it? Or could he have had more side bend and more forward lean with the torso and more reach, so that he can extend out? Because then that ball is actually easier to hit when it's actually further out in front of the plate there. So, I mean, to me, once you can identify those things of like, okay, what could they have done differently? Then when you feed them other pitches, or you talk and you do a debrief with them and you show them video like that, then they can go experiment, explore, and try those things out and see what works for them and what doesn't.
Yep.
So, I mean, for me, that's how I would utilize like that side angle slow motion.
that speaks to, what I think is, and I know I'm a broken record on this, that speaks to the issue with prescriptive technical model teaching of the swing. When you do that, when you are teaching a specific swing, this is the correct way. And if this is in podcast audio form, I am holding up air quotes right now when I say that. If this is the correct way, air quotes, to swing, that is by definition restrictive and confining. And it is sending the message to the athlete, to the hitter, that this is the way that you were supposed to do this, regardless of what is placed in front of you, regardless of what the pitch is asking you to do or what the previous context was. And it by definition limits exactly the things that you were mentioning, of possibly being able to go out and get it more or ride your weight out further, maybe even out on your front foot, which is a no-no in terms of the way that we teach hitting nowadays.
Or just even old school. I mean, for me, that's old school because that's what I was learning when I was coming up.
Yeah.
Coaches were so against that.
But you are taking away those potential
movement solutions,
or to use a ecological dynamics phrase, action capabilities. You are limiting that potential by saying this is the way that you swing. Well, what if you need something else that is outside of these rules that you're placing on me that I am supposed to stick within? And to me, that's why you see so many hitters that can only hit pitches in the middle of the plate. Because they never explore to try to expand that dexterity that you mentioned earlier to be able to actually get to those different pitches because they're so worried about executing this specific movement pattern. I even hate the word pattern. It sucks.
I agree. I agree with
this
that.
specific movement pattern that limits you from being able to get to more pitches other than just down the middle. So then what does that lead to? Then it leads to, and it comes out of, it's a circular causation, in my opinion. This whole swing at pitches that you can hit down the middle and don't wait for pitchers to make a quote unquote mistake. And I'm doing air quotes again.
Or take 3-0.
Yeah. You just have to wait for the pitcher to make a mistake. Wait for the pitcher to make a mistake. Which is why I've said this multiple times on social media. Why don't we try to create mistakes with how we train? Why don't we try to create the ability to make pitchers pitches or no longer pitchers because we are exploring all these different action capabilities to be able to then deploy on these different pitches. Then maybe we don't have to limit ourselves to just hitting pitches down the middle. That ball was smoked. Ground rule double. That was a perfect example right there.
Yeah.
That was a perfect example right there. That was middle in, thigh high, and yeah, he smoked it on that pitch. And he probably thinks it's because of his swing, but it was because it's in the perfect place that he trains for on a regular basis, and he's more attuned to that pitch. Or
he was just fully in the moment, too, and fully attuned, adaptable, and dexterous there. And this is the other thing too, though, when it comes to when we're talking about attuned, adaptable, dexterous, from an ecological dynamics approach, you're not always the same person. From moment to moment, you're changing. Your psychological state changes from moment to moment. Your action capabilities change from moment to moment. And so we're hoping, though, that through all the different training, that training environment and past experience playing the game that you have, that you'll better be able to get into those states that allow you to succeed. And so for me, that's kind of why I say he was attuned, adaptable, and dexterous in that moment.
But that is based on the experiential level that you have with those moments, right? So
in a way, yes. I mean, because
going to, well, I mean, it's going to coincide with how often you found yourself in this type of situation, right?
Well, where you're going with it, or where I'm going to take where you were going with it, is what it'll then show is like, if you're able to do it more consistently, then you're going to have more consistent results. But just in the way that you can take one person who doesn't have a ton of track record of history of being performing at a high level, and you stick them in a high level moment, and then they actually perform. That's not based upon their past experience. That's based on the fact that everything in that situation, whether it's something that a coach said, maybe it, something else too that they were listening to throughout the day, they watched an inspirational video, somebody said a good word to them, whatever, and then they, it combines with that moment when they go up to the plate and they hit a pitch that they have no business, or get a hit, game-winning hit off of a pitcher they have no business doing that against. That to me just shows that for that moment they were in such a state that they were able to be attuned, adaptable, dexterous.
So you're talking about flow, like the idea of like a flow state, more so than, oh, I've experienced hitting that pitch in practice, so it's easier for me to do it in competition.
Well, I mean, it's both, right? Like, so what I'm saying is that because like what I like about an ecological approach is that we talk about complexity. Like everything is a multifactorial event, right? So it's not taking away from what you're saying at all. It's just saying that when we assess like why something happens, it's not always because of their past experience.
Right.
That is a component of it, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite for it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because there's all kinds of things that go into why we have the capability to do the things that we do from a physicality standpoint, whether it's athletic or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's back to your previous podcast. Maybe he ate Cheerios this morning or whatever. Like it all plays in, and it's more on the perceptions of the athlete and how they perceive it. But I mean, that doesn't mean that you can do everything. You do have to understand like how the system adapts, perceptually. And to your point that you were making earlier, we want them to be able to do that more often and more frequently, not just one time, like, we're watching the movie Miracle and we just have to beat the Russians one time, So that's why these things matter, and actually understanding these principles and trying to implement them more frequently and more often. It's so that the athletes can perform at a high level more frequently and more often.
That didn't look like it felt good. Did you see that?
Yeah. Did he scratch up his nose?
It looks like it. I don't know if that's dirt or like blood.
Yeah.
Oh, that was right down the middle.
Oh, here we go. Infield in.
We could potentially have what is the score of the White Sox Astros game? 6-1, top of the 8th. So, barring something crazy, the Astros are going to complete that series.
Mm-hmm.
The Braves win this game, and then the Giants win tonight. Then we could have every series would be done today.
Yeah. That's why I was like, we got to do this stream today, not tomorrow, because there might not be anything to watch tomorrow.
There may not be anything until Friday, because that's when I think that's the schedule.
Dude, that's a big out right there.
It was. Couldn't even get it in play to try to
I mean, this is where
in.
like, everybody talks about like, oh, just hit the ball hard and far. You don't always necessarily need to do that. Like, I'd take Luis Ariz in that situation, who can just find a hole. Like that works there.
It does, but you're taking a greater risk from a probability standpoint because there's more infielders on the infield
Sure.
with a less of a reaction time. Obviously, with them moved in, there's less of a reaction time.
I mean, there's that, but I mean that works too if that stays fair. Nope. But like,
Flyball.
look, all you have to do though is like by a contact hitter. Like what I'm meaning is not necessarily just a ground ball through the infield. I'm meaning with the ability to handle the bat, and even because Arise has the ability to flip it over the infield.
Yeah,
I mean that's what you need in that scenario is somebody who has good bat control, good contact ability, who can basically spray the ball at different angles. I mean, a ball in the air there is going to score somebody too. I mean that's where to me when you got a guy in third,
hit it in the air, try to hit it over the infielders, and you may get a hit out of it. You may hit a double out of it. At the very least, you got a decent chance. I mean, as long as you don't hit it like Sally, of getting a sac fly out of it, like worst case scenario. So just try to hit it hard into the outfield somewhere, which, again, like we mentioned earlier, that's to me, that's pretty much always the goal, like no matter the situation. And I feel like if you start there, you give yourself a really, really good chance in pretty much any scenario of coming through in whatever situation that you're trying to come through in.
Absolutely. I mean, because for me, my whole focus from the hitting side is how do we score runs?
Mm-hmm.
It's great to, try to go for two runs right there. But you know what? What's that old saying? Like one in the hand is better than two in the bush. Like, I mean, I'd rather have a run there than, gamble on two, just in the sense of like, I'm not going to be opposed if you hit it over the fence, by any means. But once you got two strikes on you, like let's go for where the higher probability is with the infield still in.
I think that's where the distinction is. The count. Before two strikes, try to freaking crush it. And you get a pitch that you feel like you can hammer it. If you miss it, it's still probably going to be a sac fly, right? When you get the two strikes, like still try to hit it hard into the outfield, but like make your focus like I just got to find a way to hit this, put the barrel just a little bit below the middle of the ball, and try to do that as hard as I can with the constraint of trying to make sure that I'm able to do that first and foremost. And who knows, you still may hit a home run, like with that kind of approach, like you still may hit a double.
Absolutely.
In the gap, but at the very least, like you are trying to get it into the outfield and like maybe you have a chance to at least drive that run in, even if you're not driving yourself.
I mean, because that right there would have gotten the run in on the last step at.
Absolutely. And now no runs in that inning.
And we'll see how many runs, ultimately matter in this game. I can't remember, what was it? The Rays game yesterday, Boston, it came down to one run in a way.
Yep.
So, but I like this so far of using the game as just a way to talk.
Yep. And to kind of bring up conversation about things, and it kind of reminds you of stuff. It's like examples of things in like the real game situations, which, imagine this is where it matters. Like,
yes,
in the game, that's where it matters. We forget that so often. So often.
I mean, too, like those arm slots, just how that ball is moving. I find that to be hard. Obviously, I often don't coach at a level where guys are this good, but at the same point, like how do you recreate that when, you only have so many arms, that's what I've been thinking about is how do I recreate these different pitches? Look. Yeah. And those different looks.
Well, which is like, I mean, that's another limitation of like traditional BP, right? Off of a coach. Which is why like and I know we've talked about this before, the the flaws from the perspective of picking up information off of the pitcher that exist in using pitching machines. That, you know, that would be your, like, from conversations we've had previously, that would be your biggest complaint of them. And, you know, I know from an ecological perspective, that is, you know, a negative part of using a pitching machine. Is it real, like, the fact that you, in a batting practice setting, you face such a different type of pitch from a movement and velocity standpoint, the fact that you actually get to pick up the information that really isn't like that consistent with the information that you're getting from a pitcher, to your point, throwing at those arm angles with that speed, and their body is moving very differently than how a traditional BP thrower, like a coach, is going to move. They're in a different spot. They're closer to you. So the negatives that you get from using a pitching machine, from not getting those things, is it really that adverse compared to, you know, okay,
Using
I'm not going to get that close of information. I'm not going to get that close of information from a BP pitcher anyway. So I might as well get the pitch right, like the actual ball flight. I might as well at least get that piece of it similar, since, you know, I guess the point I'm trying to make is a coach throwing batting practice does not really look that much like a pitcher throwing to you. It doesn't.
In some ways, it depends how you do it. Like, meaning, does the coach actually try to pitch? You know, use a pitching motion, or is he just throwing it over the plate? I mean, granted, like, I liked, you know, going down and hanging out with Nick, and he's throwing batting practice. Now, he didn't. I don't remember that if he had a full leg kick and everything, but I mean, the mere fact that he was mixing pitches, that was awesome.
When was that?
And maybe end of August or something. I was there before Flyball started.
You went to Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
What were you there for?
I was trying to get FlightScope to work. I need to email FlightScope so that I can do something to get my FlightScope working.
Why were you in Atlanta, though?
Because I wanted to calibrate it against TrackMan.
Oh, so you went down there specifically for that?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you set that up with Nick and everything?
Yep.
And he was like, was it like individuals for them, and he was throwing to guys?
No, me and him were just talking, and we went into the cage and started goofing around.
Okay.
And so he was throwing to me. And this is actually, like, so we did something that I really liked, which is to your point earlier. Is he just, like, I think you should, if your guys can handle it, you should just start off with this of hit everything BP and it's mixed. So all he was doing was mixing, and I had no idea which pitch was coming. And my whole goal was just to try to be as connected as possible, or in the moment as possible.
To the ball.
Yep. To him and the ball, and just barrel it. I was just trying to warm up by, like, so, did you see Rafe Kelly? Did I share Rafe Kelly's work with you at all?
Maybe.
He spoke at the Sport Movement Skill Conference this year. But anyways, I went to his retreat this past weekend, and his whole thing was on parkour, martial arts, natural movement, all that sort of stuff. And so some of the activities we did were just to, like, just warm up the body to move, and to try to be more perceptually in tune with your environment. And so, like, something as simple as, like, okay, we're going to move. I'm going to fix my eyes on a specific target, and I'm not going to take my eyes off of that target. And I'm just going to move in as many different ways and explore. And so, like, I just kind of, to me, it's like taking that concept, except now we're just actually hitting, and this is a warm up. I'm not trying to move fast. I'm not trying to, like, crush the ball as hard as I can. I'm literally just trying to hit the ball. Every single pitch that is thrown, my goal is to try to hit it.
Yep.
And I think that's a great warm up.
That's it, exactly what you just said. That is a staple in any programming that I have control over to be able to run. Anything that I have the control over, like I do, and I call them, and I think Chad calls them the same thing. No takes rounds. So you literally don't get to take. And I try to do them as often as I possibly can. I don't know that I always do the best job of explaining the reasoning behind it. That is an area that I can improve in, because it takes that is so very different from what hitters expect and what people expect in this game. It's actually the opposite.
Yes, right. I mean, it's more
the opposite of what they're taught, right? Even
Yes.
in batting practice, they're taught, don't swing at that in BP. That's 2 inches off the plate. Like, so you're never going to swing at a pitch that's 2 inches off the plate in a game? Like, come on, dude. But it's so anti, what they're taught these days. So it takes a lot to get buy-in with that. But I think that is, it might quite possibly be the best hitting exercise that I like to do, and could potentially have the most amount of benefit to any hitter at any level if you can get the buy-in and get them to actually fully commit to trying to get something out of it.
I mean, in some ways, I don't know if I would go that far. I look at it as a warm-up. For me, it's a warm-up. It's something that gets you perceptually attuned. I think it gets you, to your point, exploring. I like it a lot. I just don't, because I think really where you have to go with this, and this is what I see a lot, though, with a lot of other people, like they'll do some things that are ecological, but to me, you have to take it all the way in terms of representativeness. I mean, that's where you kind of go with the ecological approach, is like, okay, where are you on the continuum of representativeness? And to me, like, the hit everything round is not that representative. I mean, there's elements.
It could be.
Right, well, it could be, but
I think it could be.
But it's not. It's one slice of the game, and I've been thinking about this, and this came up in the conversation I was having today about like the martial arts stuff, and because martial arts has just this panacea of like different things, and so in a way, you're looking to see, okay, I have you heard of the book Make It Stick by Peter Brown? It's about learning. Yeah. So in it, he talks about this idea and concept of interleaving. And so to me, what I want to do is I want to interleave a bunch of different types of scenarios, skills, whatever. So for example, like a hit everything round. I might start there, and then I might transition to like a, 2-strike round, or maybe a transition to runner on third round, less than 2 outs, get them in. Like we're gonna start here, and then we're gonna go over here, and then we might come back to hit everything round again. But maybe I'm watching the player and I'm like, you're gonna do hit everything round, and then you're gonna work 2-strike round or something, or whatever. So I might mix it up based upon what you see the player needing. But that's how I would approach it.
It can be hugely beneficial in the example that you just gave to provide a context where this exercise that we're doing to start off, there could be some potential crossover where you can utilize the skills that you're developing in the hit everything round or the no takes round.
Yes.
Here is a context where you could potentially use those skills. Now let's do this. And then that helps them make the connection better, because it's like, okay, this is why we do this. Because then it's the situation that they might actually be able to deploy that skill.
So the perfect example is you go from hit everything round to a hit and run round.
Yeah.
I mean, and
which is basically the same thing, right?
It is, but it isn't. Like, let's say I actually put a runner on, and then we actually put fielders out there, and now I actually have you, because to me, I like the idea, and we've probably talked about this before, whether it's legend or not. It's something that I think if someone actually did it, then we should try and see if we can recreate it. If the fielders are in motion on a hit and run, do you have the ability to, or what does the pitch afford you? Because now that the fielders are moving, does that pitch afford you put it in the hole? Does it afford you putting it in a different hole and hitting it in a different spot where you would traditionally hit it? And so that's to me is where you make it more specific and then see what they can do with it. Because yes, it's the same, but it's not the same, because once you start putting in different pieces into that equation and into that task, it's going to change the behavior.
Well, because it changes your attentional focus, and it changes different variables which are going to alter what you're trying to do and what your intentions are as a result of what you as you alluded to, what you're perceiving in the moment, which is going to change that. Also, whatever instructions you're given by the coach, whatever instructions you're given by the person that is instructing you or developing you or has expectations of you in that moment. Like, for example, on a hit and run, most coaches want the ball where? On the ground. I'm not necessarily one of them. I'm not that rigid on that, but a lot of coaches, it's like, whatever you got to do, you hit everything and it better be on the ground. You hit the top part of the ball and make sure it's on the ground. Those are obvious constraints with what guys are trying to do, which that changes it from a no takes round to okay, yeah, I don't get to take, and I'm supposed to be doing this, and this is what I'm seeing from the defense, which may or may not change what I'm trying to do. Those are a lot of constraints, and those are a lot of different things to try to be like grappling with, while at the same time being in the moment and being like focused on the ball and like having that be your primary focus of what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, that obviously adds a lot of variables, which could then potentially change your behavior as a result of all those constraints, whether it be environmental, psychological, the expectations that are associated with that as well. Those are all things to consider that are obvious, very, very different factors from the ones that you're going to get from just okay, let's not take anything and let's just hit everything that we see. It does make it more complex for sure, without a doubt.
Well, and two, if you actually have runners out there and you have a catcher and a pitcher, like, how often is it said, well, you swing at everything when you're on a hit and run? And it's like, let's just think about that.
You
really?
Don't.
Everything?
You actually don't. Yeah.
Right?
If it's like way over your head or if it bounces 3 feet in front of the plate, you probably shouldn't be swinging at it.
I mean, if the catcher can't make a throw on that ball that's being thrown to you and it's not a strike, then take the darn thing. Like, there's no reason. Yep, what's the point of taking a strike there on a pitch that doesn't deserve to be called a strike? And all you did was hurt yourself. It had zero benefit.
You could have a runner on. You could have a runner on second without having to give yourself up.
Yeah.
And still have a chance to drive him in. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I think, though, you like by doing that and doing it live with the runner and stuff, is like they begin to, and a catcher, because the catcher can then start to see, like, can I get this guy out on this ball? I mean, because if you have, as a hitter, you need to have some sense of what the catcher's capabilities are so that it can tell you what pitches you should swing or not swing at. Because we're going to be, as coaches, mad if you take a pitch on a hit and run that gets the runner thrown out on. Like, yeah, but it bounced. Yeah, but it bounced right into his glove. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. You still got to swing at that one. You got to protect the runner. So to me, that explains why you should have these different pieces involved in your practice activity.
Yeah. Side note, I don't know that I would do that because I'm not a big hit and run guy personally. So I don't know that I would have any players that I'm coaching where I have the authority over what they are doing or not doing in competition. I don't know that I would put them in that situation because it just wouldn't be useful, because I'm probably not going to be asking them to do that in a game anyway. So
that's fair.
That's a whole other conversation though.
Yeah. For me personally, I want my offense to be dexterous, adaptable and dexterous.
Oh, so, I do like the idea of a guy running while a hitter is hitting.
That's fair.
And I do like.
But you want that to be a straight steal if a guy's running. I want it to be
organic. Like I do not want to tell hitters. I don't tell hitters, hey, if you like, if a guy's running and he gets a great jump, I want you to take that pitch. I don't say that. No, if it's something you feel like you can hammer, crush it. Let the hit and runs happen that way. Let them happen. It actually might happen more frequently as a result of just allowing it to organically happen. Playing the game with what they're seeing in the moment, what they're attuning to, what the game is providing them. kind of giving it to them in that way. As far as like me, like explicitly saying, you're going to run here and you're going to swing no matter what. Like that's not who I am as a coach. I like giving more of that freedom and kind of teaching before and after to players how they could potentially be picking up better information and being able to, maybe provide for themselves better ways to be more successful. I think it's better if it happens organically instead of me legislating it by putting a sign on to say, hey, we're hitting and running here. Like, no, just let it happen naturally.
No, I like that. So when I'm thinking about what you're saying, I'm thinking about like, okay, how would I design my practices to allow the players to fully take advantage of that philosophy? And so like, based upon what you were saying, I would want my hitters and runners to some extent, but no, actually runners too. So I want my hitters to actually experience that where they see guys just take off. We don't know that they're running. They take off. And quite honestly, I would want guys to have some attunement and some one sensitivity to that, but then also some sensitivity and attunement to, is that really, really a pitch that you can drive? Because if you feel like, maybe like initially you're like, yes, and then you're like, not 100% on this, and he got a great jump, shut it down. You know what I mean? Like
sure,
that you have to create scenarios where they train that field, because otherwise they're just going to take a hack there and it's going to hurt your guys that, he had a great jump that time and
he fouled it off.
Yeah. And so, but on the flip side, you then need your runners used to the fact of you go steal, ball put in play in the air, you got to go find the ball.
Yeah, they need to be peaking. Yep.
They have to have that awareness of being able to find the ball, pick it up, and know whether or not they got to book it back to their previous base, or you know what, maybe actually you got two bases or more there, and you got to be ready to get going on your horse. I mean, because sometimes I bet you'd see that too, where a guy just goes to steal and they see it hit and they just stop at the base that they're going to. So
well, I think that from like a base running standpoint and from just like a playing the game standpoint, that is, that's just being, as we've talked about a lot here, being in the moment, being attuned to what the ball is doing, being aware of every bit of piece of info that you can be taking up around you in the environment to then be able to make better decisions and be more instinctual with how you are trying to play the game that's going to lead to the most amount of success. So, which, would be a very big part from an offensive standpoint. If I was in control of an offense, that I would be trying to instill those concepts and those ideas and principles. And more specifically, if you're stealing, you like 100% of the time you peak. There is never a time that you are stealing that you are not looking in to try to pick up the ball as it's going into the hitting zone. Like, always, you always need to be picking that up, because you never know if the hitter is going to be swinging at that pitch or not. So you need to be picking that up. The other thing from a hitting standpoint, and you brought this point up, it's a really good point. Having conversations with the hitters to say, listen, I want you to have the freedom to hit. If it's a pitch that you feel like you can hammer in a gap somewhere, I also want you to have the freedom to feel like if you want to take that pitch because you would rather hit with him on second than him on first, take it. Like, I want to leave that up to them. Like, and that is a decision based on them in the moment, how they're feeling, whether they're confident enough to be able to take a pitch down the middle. Maybe it gets into one strike, maybe it gets into the two, but they're confident enough in their ability to be able to get the job done later in the at bat because maybe they want a better RBI opportunity. So having the freedom to do either or, those are conversations that you have with your hitters as well. And then it's something you talk about before. It's something you talk about after ABs, so that they can better be able to determine whether that was a good decision to either swing or not swing, and how they can be better from that moving forward in the future. As far as a practice design standpoint, I think that's why I'm such a believer in playing games as often as you possibly can. Now, with the intention of having conversation before and after, so that you can learn from stuff that happens in the game. But that's why, from a practice design standpoint, as often as we can create those situations by playing actual games, with the freedom to be able to stop games if necessary, to be able to talk about situations and be able to learn from them. But as often as you possibly can, you play games so that you put players in those situations so that you can then facilitate that conversation so that they can grow from it. But
Mhm.
to your
Mhm.
point, you can't attune better in those moments in these types of situations from a base running standpoint, from a hitting standpoint, unless you are actually doing it and it's actually real, which is why games are so important for hitters and base runners and pitchers and catchers and fielders and all baseball players. It's so important for their development, and the ability to be able to create those conversations comes from that.
And two, I think another way of doing it, I'm not opposed to scrimmaging. I know that coaches, like old school coaches, that's what they would do a lot. It's just scrimmage. I mean, there's some value and utility to that. But I think the there's another way to approach it as well. Like, let's say that's, you want to argue that that's not the best way. What, like, guys need more specific work. Well, I think you just scale it down instead of it being like just a normal scrimmage where like it follows the normal rules of the game. Man, you just set up those scenarios where those things that you want to work on are, and it's just a slice of the game.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm kind of more of an advocate of that. I'm not opposed to scrimmaging. I think it's good, but if you need specific work on certain slices of the game, or you want to give guys a certain feel, because again, and by feel, I mean like feel of a certain game situation that they're going to have to problem solve. I think you should create those scenarios for them and put them in front of them so that they have to work through it. Because it comes to this concept, and this is something that Robert and I wanted to talk about in a podcast, is this idea of knowledge of versus knowledge about. You can get in front of a whiteboard and tell guys, or watch film and tell guys, this is what you need to do, but they're not going to, like, it's way different than being in there and from, a personal point of view perspective, that experience and that knowledge, that's knowledge of versus knowledge about. And we want guys to acquire knowledge of rather than knowledge about. And so that's for me why it's important to create those snippets and those slices rather than just look at film and just talk to guys and tell them what to do. You want them to actually experience that.
That's the idea of experiential learning, right? Placing yourself in the scenario, whether it be in an actual game or if you're creating more of a small-sided game type of scenario, and you're repeating that scenario over and over again so that they have to solve that problem over and over again in a way where you're able to get the right types of repetitions.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast with Caleb Abney. If you're listening along at home, the battery just died, so we appreciate you listening in. Make sure to head over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can get our clips and all that sort of stuff. Otherwise, make sure to follow Caleb Abney at cabney18, I believe it is. So if you're not already, make sure to follow Robert or myself on Twitter. You can find Robert at RobertFrey40 on the Twitterverse, and then you can find me and follow me at GBOYUM01. That will get you both my Twitter and my Instagram. So make sure to check us out, follow us, and stay up to date with the latest from Finding the Edge podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode.
Hello.
Can't see him. There's a little guy. He wanted to join me on the outro here. So
That's it?
yeah, you did. So we hope you enjoyed that episode with Caleb Abney and our live commentary. Sorry for the abrupt ending, but here's your outro to have some sense of normalcy. If I can get a quiet moment here.
Hello.